I wanted to talk about a book that I read recently that I think is going to be a good help on this personal finance journey. The book is called The Millionaire Next Door: The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy. And you may have heard of this book before. I had read it a while back, but I reread it, and there were a lot of great insights that I'd kind of forgot about between reading it the last time. And so I just wanted to pass some of those along. Now, the book was written back in the mid-90s, and at the time $1 million was worth a bit more than it is now. In today's dollars, $1 million from then would be about 1.7 million. But either way you cut it, making $1 million or having $1 million net worth is quite an accomplishment. So the premise of the book is, how do these millionaires achieve that millionaire status? What do they do in their lives that are maybe different than what a typical person would do? So I just wanted to touch on a few key points in the book. But before I do, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Aubrey, and I talk about personal finance, a little bit of minimalism, sometimes cryptocurrency, but just the general realm of personal finance and building wealth. So like I mentioned, the authors studied millionaires, those that had achieved millionaire status or multimillionaire status up to even $10 million. And they were really looking for, what are these people doing differently than, say, people that were just in the kind of the general population, that were living their lives in a more maybe what we would consider normal way. And a couple of things that they found were really surprising is they found that many millionaires do not live in really expensive homes, upscale neighborhoods. They live in smaller homes, maybe like you and me, or what we would consider normal people. They also drive kind of normal cars. You might at first think or have an expectation that these millionaires would be driving Mercedes and BMW and these import cars, luxury brands. But in a lot of cases, the authors found that these millionaires just drove average cars, domestic brands like Ford or Chevy or Chrysler. So what that really means is that the wealthy were living well below their means, which was sort of a theme that ran through the entire book. And what really goes hand in hand with that is just also the idea that if you're making good money, but you're spending it all every year, you're not building any wealth. So one of the questions that comes up in the book, and that I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about, is, are you wealthy? And wealth means different things to different people, mainly because of, depending on your income every year, what is wealthy for one person is not going to be wealth for someone else, really. So someone who makes $500,000 a year is going to have one benchmark for being wealthy, as opposed to someone who makes $50,000 a year would have a different benchmark. So the equation that is given in the book is, you take your age and you multiply it by your pre-tax annual income, and then you divide it by 10. And that number is kind of like the threshold for being wealthy, according to the book. So for instance, if you're 30 years old, you're making 50 grand a year, you would take 30, multiply it by 50,000, you'd get 1.5 million, divide by 10, 150,000. So according to this calculation, if you have $150,000 or more, you would be considered wealthy based on your age and your income. So you perform the calculation for yourself, and let me know in the comments below how you're faring. If you're above the number or somewhere below the number. That's not to discourage you if you're below the number. It's just a measurement that works for whatever your age is, whatever your income is. Most people are going to be below it. The point in the book is just that you can, over time, achieve that number. You can achieve that wealth and beyond if you just make some adjustments in your life. So one of the key adjustments to make, and what the authors found as they interviewed all these millionaires or all these wealthy people, was that in many cases, like 80% of them, they found that they lived well below their means, and they had behaviors that we would call basically frugal. Again, where they were not living in really expensive houses, they were not buying what we would consider very expensive cars. And that kind of gets back to the idea, just in the title of the book, The Millionaire Next Door. These folks looked, by any other standard, pretty pretty normal, pretty average. And the only place where you would even know that they were sort of shining from a personal finance point of view is if you looked at their finances, if you looked at the amount that they were earning every year and how they were living, then you would start to say, something is going on here. They've kind of figured something out. So reducing your spending or your consumption is not necessarily an easy thing to do, but it's something that you can certainly do over time. Try to reduce, say, if you have a car payment, reduce your car payment, get a less expensive car. If you're paying high rent or in a very expensive house, sometimes you can adjust those things. But even just in everyday expenses, whether you're buying coffee every day or going to the movies every week or eating out multiple times during the week, those are examples of things that could be reduced to help to conserve money and at the same time take that money that is saved and put it toward investments that will grow over time. So just to wrap it up here, regardless of what the media portrays as millionaire lifestyle and the lifestyles of the wealthy, that in most cases, like 70–80% of cases, the authors in the book found that the wealthy, those that are millionaires, multimillionaires, really don't live their lives that way. Sure, you're always going to have these celebrities that are making millions of dollars a year that are going to have these outrageous lifestyles and these really extravagant shows of wealth. But for those that are more kind of working class, that go to a 9-to-5 job and who are able to achieve that millionaire status or that wealthy status, the way that they got there is by really conserving funds, being careful with their money, not spending it on, say, living in a really expensive neighborhood or driving a really expensive car. So if you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with me. If this content was helpful for you, I invite you to give it a like. Also hit subscribe if you'd like to get the notifications for additional videos, and we'll see you on the next video.